Greetings builders! How was your first day of Affliction? I hope everyone is doing great and gearing up for endgame. Today I have a very special video for you, and that's because you guys are responsible for it. As you know, last week I released 12 starter builds and asked you guys on the community tab about your favorites. Now, thousands of votes later, here are the results. The first 3 builds to battle for your votes were the Arc Totem's Hierophant, the Lightning Strike Trickster and the Venom Gyre Deadeye. And as you can see, the Arc Totems rose victorious. Now let's talk about the winner, the Arc Totem's Hierophant with the Templar class.
On this build we use many totems that cast the Arc skill for a fast and safe clear speed. Listing the pros of this build, I would start with how cheap and easy it is to complete your Atlas using this beauty. With almost no investment, you have a powerful, safe and fast character that will be the perfect currency farmer for this and future builds. Now to list the cons, this build doesn't have access to evasion or spell suppression, but don't worry, totem builds are very safe to play. Another issue is that some players might find this gameplay to be a little tedious and too easy, but as you know, this is just a matter of taste. As for budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 35 chaos. To comfort but advance to yellow maps, you need to invest around 90 chaos, and for easily completing your Atlas, I recommend investing around 3 divines, but you can totally do it with less.
Don't forget that on PoEbuilds.net you can find a list with all the equipment that you need to buy for this build, with direct links for examples being sold by other players.
This build needs 3 mandatory unique items, but they are normally very cheap and easy to get. The first one is the Soul Mantle Armor, that causes Socket Gems to be supported by a level 20 spell totem. This grants us an extra support skill gem. We also need a Kikazaru Ring to counter the effect of curses. This is because a side effect of Soul Mantle that will apply a random curse on you whenever a totem dies. Finally, we also need the Self-Flagellation Jewel that grants up to 20% increased damage for each curse on you. Thanks to Soul Mantle, you'll be always with around 9 curses, resulting on 180% increased damage. For clear speed, this build gets 9 out of 10. Arc is an awesome skill that chains through many enemies and easily clear big packs. This build counts with 4 totems casting this amazing skill. The boss damage deserves 9 out of 10. With the right debuffs and all 4 totems summoned, this build can take even big bosses down without any issue. For the survivability, I would also give it 9 out of 10. As a totem build, you always be far from action while your totems do all the work. So if you know how to mind your position, you can easily complete high tier maps with low grade gear. Above all, this build still counts with high armor and high block chance.
Next, you guys had to choose between the Summon Raging Spirit's Guardian, the Toxic Rain Pathfinder and the Hex Blast Mind Saboteur. And this time the Summon Raging Spirits destroyed his opponents. So it's time to talk about him, the Summon Raging Spirit's Guardian with the Templar class. As you know, minion builds are among the best builds out there, and this one in my opinion has the best cost benefit. It's a very simple and safe build for you to complete all content without much investment or effort, awesome for beginners. To list the pros of this build, I would start with how accessible it is. It is super cheap, simple, easy to play and doesn't need any mandatory unique item. This build is for everyone. It also counts with a great boss damage and survivability. Above all, it has 3 damage hours totally for free and a minion that takes 20% of the damage for you. Now to list the cons, I'll start saying that Raging Spirits have a short duration and you need to keep resummoning them while clearing maps, which might reduce your speed a little. Other than that, this build also doesn't have access to evasion or reach. As for budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 60 chaos. To comfortable advance to yellow maps, I recommend investing around 100 chaos, and for easily completing your Atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines, but you can totally do it with less. For clear speed, this build gets 8 out of 10. This is because you have to keep resummoning your Raging Spirits, but as you can see, even though this clear speed isn't super fast, it's perfectly fine for you to play and have a good time. The boss damage is great, it's a 9 out of 10. If you apply all the buffs and maintain 20 spirit summoned, you will easily reach over 15 million DPS, more than enough to decimate all endgame bosses in seconds. For this survivability, I'll give it 10 out of 10. This is because we are talking about a minion build where you just need to summon them and wait behind while they destroy and tank everything for you. You just need to mind your position. But with this build, even if they manage to reach you, you still have high armor and block chance, resulting in an effective HP of over 140,000. Following, you have to pick from Lightning Arrow Deadeye, the Bone Shatter Juggernaut and the Tornado Shot Deadeye. This time, Lightning Arrow showed the other two who's the boss here. Now let's get to know this amazing Lightning Arrow Deadeye with the Ranger class. Even though Vengeance Cascade was nerfed, the introduction of the returning projectile support gem kept this build super fast and strong, which caused most of players to choose it. During last league, I released the Lightning Arrow guide that needed some expensive unique items, and this time I'm going to make it different. On this guide, you'll find two versions of this build, a budget and a complete one. Each one has its own PoB and passive tree, so you can start this build even on a low budget and upgrade it later. To list the pros of this build, I'm not sure if I would start with its clear speed or boss damage, because both are amazing. This build is also not complicated to put together, I totally recommend you to try it out. Now to list the cons, I would say that this build is not very tanky. Even though you have some defensive layers, it's important to take advantage of your ranged attacks and stay far from danger. If you don't mind your position, you might die. About the budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 80 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, I recommend investing around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your Atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. But if you go for the complete version, you need to invest at least 4 more divines. On the budget version, you only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Yoke of Suffering Amulet that causes all of your elemental damage to shock. This way our enemies take a lot more damage. On the complete version, on the other hand, besides the Yoke of Suffering, you also need the Lionized Fall and the Thread of Hope unique jewels. They are expensive but grant a huge boost to your damage. For clear speed, I'll give it 10 out of 10. You fire many projectiles with high attack speed and those projectiles return to you, pierce enemies, bounce off walls and go everywhere. No one can survive that. The boss damage is also amazing and deserves 10 out of 10. Using 2 Val Lightning Arrows plus your ballistas on bosses will kill them so fast that you won't believe it. For the survivability, I'll give this build 8 out of 10. Even though you have armor, evasion, spell suppression and can kill enemies from a good distance, this build isn't very tanky. If you don't mind your position, you might die. Finally, the battle was between the Essence Drain Occultist, the Infernal Flicker Strike Ascendant and the Val Ice Shot Deadeye. And this time you guys wanted to go really fast and chose the Infernal Flicker Strike. Now let's take a look at this smoking hot and fast build, the Infernal Flicker Strike Ascendant with the Scion class. This build uses the unique sword Auto Sacrifice to sustain the frenzy charges needed for you to keep flickering, but that's not any Auto's flicker build. This one also chills and shocks enemies for a lot more damage, clear speed and survivability. To list the pros of this build, I would of course start with its clear speed. Flicker is just incredibly fast and super cool to play. This build also counts with an amazing boss damage and high survivability. Now to list the cons, the first thing that comes to my mind is that you are always very close to enemies, which is a vulnerable position. Another issue is that you have little control over your character, making it hard on bosses where you need to mind your position or attack the right enemy. As for budget, I can only estimate it for now, but normally you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 90 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, you need to invest around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your Atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. You need 3 mandatory unique items for this build. The first and most important is the Auto Sacrifice Sword that allows you to maintain your frenzy charges always up even while flickering. Next, we also need the Call of the Void ring that causes your attacks to chill and shatter enemies. This ring might be a little expensive during the first days of a new league, but don't worry, you'll be fine without it while waiting for the prices to drop. Finally, we also need the Yoke of Suffering Amulet that causes all of our damage to be able to shock enemies for a lot more damage. For clear speed, this build is surely a 10 out of 10. As any other flicker build, this one is also insanely fast. So fast that some players can even play without getting nauseous. The boss damage is great and deserves 9 out of 10. This build achieves high amounts of DPS, capable of decimating even the big bosses in just seconds. Now for the survivability, I'll only give it 8 out of 10, even though this build still has almost 100,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion and spell suppression. I had to take 2 points out because they're always very close to enemies. And that's it for today guys, I hope you keep having lots of fun on the Affliction League. As always, don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments and give a thumbs up to support the channel. I wish you guys an amazing day, and don't forget to keep building!